December 7, 1941. A quiet Sunday morning turned into hell on Earth. In just 110 minutes, 2,403 lives vanished. A nation's pride lay smoldering in oily waters. But this wasn't just an attack, it was a desperate gamble by an empire on the brink of collapse. Why did Japan risk everything to strike America? What secrets were buried in the wreckage? And how did one morning rewrite the fate of the world? This is the story of Pearl Harbor like you've never heard it. Not just bombs and battleships, but oil, ego, and a miscalculation that doomed an empire. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll decide, was this Japan's masterstroke or history's deadliest blunder? The dawn of December 7, 1941, broke over the Hawaiian island of Oahu with the serene calm of a tropical paradise. Sailors aboard the U.S. Pacific Fleet's battleships, moored in neat rows along Pearl Harbor's Battleship Row, prepared for a routine Sunday. Many were still asleep, while others wrote letters home or attended morning religious services. Unbeknownst to them, 230 miles to the north, a Japanese strike force of 6 aircraft carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, Shokaku, and Zuikaku, had launched 353 aircraft into the crisp morning sky. This armada, commanded by Vice Admiral Chuchi Nagumo, had traversed the stormy North Pacific in radio silence, evading detection through meticulous planning and favorable weather. Their mission, to deliver a preemptive knockout blow to the U.S. Navy, crippling its ability to interfere with Japan's imperial ambitions in Southeast Asia. The roots of this audacious attack stretched back decades. Following the Meiji Restoration of 1868, Japan rapidly industrialized and militarized, seeking to shed its feudal past and join the ranks of global powers. Victories in the First Sino-Japanese War, 1894–1895, and the Russo-Japanese War, 1904–1905, cemented its status as Asia's dominant force. However, Japan's lack of natural resources, particularly oil, iron, and rubber, left it vulnerable. By the 1930s, militarists within the government, driven by ultranationalist ideologies, advocated for expansion into resource-rich regions like Manchuria and China. The 1937 invasion of China, marked by atrocities such as the Nanjing Massacre, drew international condemnation and economic sanctions. The US, Britain, and the Netherlands froze Japanese assets and imposed embargoes, cutting off 90% of Japan's oil supply by July 1941. With reserves dwindling, Japan faced a stark choice: withdraw from its conquests or seize the oil fields of the Dutch East Indies, Indonesia, and British Malaya. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, architect of the Pearl Harbor attack, understood the risks. A Harvard-educated strategist, Yamamoto had opposed war with the U.S., fearing its industrial might. Yet, tasked with planning the strike, he aimed to replicate Japan's surprise victory at Port Arthur in 1904. His plan hinged on disabling the U.S. Pacific Fleet long enough for Japan to consolidate its southern resource area. The attack's success relied on secrecy, precision, and luck. Pilots trained relentlessly in shallow-water torpedo bombing, modifying weapons to navigate Pearl Harbor's shallow depths. Meanwhile, Japanese diplomats in Washington, D.C., engaged in futile negotiations to mask military preparations. A final diplomatic note, breaking off relations, was meant to arrive 30 minutes before the attack, but delays caused it to be delivered afterward, deepening U.S. outrage. At 7:02 a.m., 2 radar operators on Oahu's northern tip spotted a large blip. Mistaking it for a scheduled flight of US B-17 bombers, they dismissed the alert. At 7:48 a.m., First wave of Japanese planes, led by Commander Mitsuo Fukuda, roared over the harbor. Fukuda radioed, "Tora, Tora, Tora! Tiger! Tiger! Tiger!" signaling complete surprise. Bombers struck airfields at Hickam, Wheeler, and Ford Island, destroying 188 aircraft on the ground. Torpedo planes targeted Battleship Row, where the USS Oklahoma capsized, trapping hundreds inside. The USS Arizona suffered a cataclysmic explosion when a 1,760-pound armor-piercing bomb detonated its forward magazine, killing 1,177 crewmen instantly. Survivors like Marine Corporal E.C. Nightingale described flames engulfing the ship, men on fire jumping into oil-coated waters. The second wave, launched at 8:50 a.m., faced mounting resistance. Sailors like Dory Miller, an African-American mess attendant aboard the USS West Virginia, manned anti-aircraft guns despite lacking formal training. He later received the Navy Cross. By 9:45 a.m., the attack ended. In less than 2 hours, 19 U.S. ships were sunk or damaged, 2,403 Americans lay dead, and 1,178 were wounded. Japan lost 29 aircraft and 55 airmen, with 74 others injured. Crucially, U.S. aircraft carriers, Enterprise, Lexington, and Saratoga, were absent, having been deployed on training exercises or delivering planes to Midway and Wake Islands. This oversight would haunt Japan. President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed Congress the next day, declaring December 7th a date which will live in infamy. The U.S. declared war on Japan, and on December 11th, Germany and Italy declared war on the U.S., fulfilling their Axis commitments. The attack unified a divided America, enlistment lines stretched for blocks, and industries shifted to war production. The famous sleeping giant quote, attributed to Yamamoto, encapsulated Japan's miscalculation. "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." Intelligence failures and controversies. The U.S. had intercepted Japanese diplomatic cables via the MAGIC program, which decrypted messages sent on the Purple Cipher machine. However, intelligence was fragmented, and warnings to Pearl Harbor were delayed. General Walter Short and Admiral Husband Kimmel, commanders in Hawaii, were later scapegoated for the disaster, though declassified documents suggest they were denied critical intelligence. Conspiracy theories alleging Roosevelt's foreknowledge persist but lack evidence. The human toll and heroism. The attack's brutality was matched by acts of courage. Pharmacist's mate second-class William Lynch swam through burning oil to rescue sailors. Japanese pilot Shigenori Nishikaichi crash-landed on Niihau Island, where native Hawaiian residents disarmed him, highlighting the complex loyalties of the era. The attack also catalyzed racism. 120,000 Japanese Americans were forcibly interned in camps under Executive Order 9066, a stain on U.S. civil liberties. Strategic aftermath. While Japan achieved tactical success, the strategic victory eluded them. The U.S. carriers, spared at Pearl Harbor, spearheaded the June 1942 Battle of Midway, sinking 4 Japanese carriers and shifting the Pacific War's momentum. America's industrial juggernaut produced ships and planes at an unmatched pace. By 1945, the U.S. launched a warship every week. Japan's economy, blockaded by submarines, collapsed. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945 forced surrender, but Pearl Harbor's legacy endured. Modern reflections. Today, the USS Arizona Memorial, spanning the sunken battleship, serves as a grave and a symbol of reconciliation. Oil still leaks from the wreck, dubbed the Tears of the Arizona. In 2016, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe became Japan's first leader to visit the memorial, stating, "We must never repeat the horrors of war." The attack remains a cautionary tale of hubris, miscalculation, and the human cost of conflict.